Dave, what are you watching at the moment?
So I've been watching Loudermilk because of you.
Loudermilk.
Have you guys seen Loudermilk?
Yeah, I've just started it as well.
So
yeah,
it's,
really good, right?
Loved it.
Surprisingly good. Yeah.
So only about 7 episodes in because it dropped on Netflix. But Liam's been banging on about it. I think probably since it came out.
Yeah.
To be honest, was it 2017 or something?
No one else has ever watched it, and all of a sudden now everyone's watched it.
It was on some like obscure network though, wasn't it? Or some.
It was always on Amazon. I watched it on Prime.
Oh, really?
It was during lockdown. Actually, I started watching it.
Well, now you mentioned Prime, Fargo, the new season of Fargo. I'm like 2-3 episodes into that. John Hamm is amazing in it. If you haven't seen any of it yet, it's definitely worth checking out.
I've heard good feedback so far on the new series.
And do you know what? I don't even know why I go into this, but do you remember the old Batman 1992 animated series?
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go just to see if it's still as sort of good as I remember. It's so dark, you know. This is generally like, I wrote down the description for episode 12, right? It is. An aging mob boss learns his drug dealings have contributed to his son's drug addiction. And I was watching this at like 13. This is dark. Dark
TV,
stuff.
Wasn't it? This is why that's why we're fucked up as kids. Like, yeah, no chance.
I generally didn't remember it being that as like deep.
No.
And the episodes are like that. So what about you two guys? What have you been watching?
Hey, let me go first. I appreciate that, John.
For a change.
Yeah. Do you know what I watched recently? The original Chicken Run, in preparation for watching the new Chicken Run that's just been released, and it's still. Well, I don't know if anyone would agree, but I think it really. I think it really holds up. It's really good. It is genuinely really good. Mel Gibson plays Rocky.
Sorry, I had a little episode.
We talked about we've talked about Mel Gibson haven't we, before, John, and we agree he's a great actor if you exclude all the personal issues. But yeah, Chicken Run I watched. I started the first 10 sort of minutes of the sequel, and I'm not really getting into it, I'm afraid. I don't
really understand like where does the sequel sit with the original? Like, is it a direct sequel? Because Mel Gibson's not in this one, right?
It is still Rocky though.
Yeah, it's Zachary Levi, who's Shazam plays in. But they recast loads and loads of the characters, which was I think it's a little bit disappointing, maybe a little bit insulting to some of the original actors.
Come under Disney a little bit at the moment, or they're doing stuff with Disney?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm sure they've got a bit of a deal at the moment.
But Sophie's my daughter knows inadvertently the Scouse Chicken. She is she's an actress, and apparently that's her first gig. Her first role is in Chicken Run too.
Scouse Chicken.
Yeah, the Scouse.
I haven't got the
chicken all the way through it.
There's a Scouse Chicken in it, and I just automatically presumed it was Jodie Comer. I thought, well, if you've got a Scouse Chicken, it's going to be Jodie Comer. It's not. Yeah. It's like an unknown Scouse actress. Apparently. What about you? You watching anything?
It's John, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, John. Yeah, we'll go to you next.
No worries. I've watched a few this week. I think Man on Fire I watched while I was working the other day, which is a great film.
Quote unquote working, is that?
All right, I had my laptop open and I had Man on Fire on the tablet.
Do you work from home as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of split. I do 3 days at home, well, 2 or 3 days at home and the rest in the office. So, but a lot of the admin that I do, I can have films on in the background, and which is how we kind of find things for our episodes, I guess. But it's such a good film, and that's, I think, Denzel Washington at his peak, I think. But I forgot how sad it was. Like, it's quite an emotional ending, and I had a meeting as it finished at 2:00 on the dot. And I'm not ashamed to say I was actually a little bit teary when it finished. Then I realised on the dot I had to be in this meeting, so I sort of sorted my face out a little bit, and I thought it'll be fine. And as soon as I went into the meeting, my eyes were just like really puffy, and so I just spent most of the meeting sort of looking around so no one could see.
And it's a terrible way that he goes as well.
Yeah, it's a really good. I think his story arc's really good, but it's kind of, for me, that's the right ending. It's the way that the film should have ended. I think if it had survived, I don't think it would have been as impactful. To be fair,
The one thing surprised me this week, they're doing a prequel to the Book of Eli.
I read about that. Yeah, is it John Boyega?
It's John Boyega, but
Yeah.
surely you just cast John David Washington.
His son, yeah.
He is his literal like his son, and he's an amazing actor. It was really like I thought it was an odd casting, to be honest. I love
Yeah.
John Boyega; he's brilliant. But
Yeah, I think it's set like 30 years before the film or
Yeah.
something like that. I read, which is
Because I didn't-
interesting.
I didn't realize that was Denzel Washington's son. So we were doing one of our podcasts.
I'd
and
been to see the creator.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah. And then as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God, yeah.
The voice,
They look and sound
Yeah.
like each other.
definitely.
Proper nepotism, that though, isn't it? But he is good.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Go on, what about you?
I've been watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon. Me and the wife have
That's it, yeah.
absolutely hammered the first couple of series. It's brilliant. The main girl, Rachel Brosnan, is just fantastic in it. And it's also got Kevin Pollak, he's in A Few Good Men. And also that Tony Shalhoub, who plays Monk. Have you ever seen it?
I've not seen Monk.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're
Monk's
good.
really good. But I remember watching Monk recently, and it was the guy who plays one of the lieutenants in it, and I didn't recognize him with his clothes on.
Who was it?
Ted Levine.
Oh, okay. Nicely segued.
There's our
So,
race. There's our way.
We'll put our music in,
We edited it in.
and we'll do the little intro, and then we'll go into use. Is that all right?
Have you got your little bit ready?
I've got my little bit ready. That sounds bad. That got my little bit ready. It's over. I can put the boards here. What I thought was once we've done the bit with like you guys telling us all about the podcast, if I just ask you what film you picked, and I'll just sort of tell our listener what it's about, and then we'll just go straight into like why have you picked it, and and if we do kind of who's in it. But what we tend to do is kind of if we do who's in it, but sort of go by one, just say like Jodie Foster, and if you give us some like recommendations of like Jodie Foster films, if you can think of, we've got some kind of written down anyway that you can kind of tell us if you've seen or you think is not worth watching or whatever. But is that all right?
But
Sounds good to me.
we're just like this is the first time we've done it with guests, so we're just making this up as we go along.
Oh yeah.
That's the best way.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah.
I'm going to do this with trying. I can't do this and look in the camera, by the way.
Don't worry about it.
All right. I'll try and get through it once because this can take a
The
couple of
video-
takes.
I'll cover my eyes so I'm not looking at you.
Anyway.
Okay, are we ready? Right. Okay. Hello and welcome to Watch It If You Can. My name is Dave.
My name is Liam.
This podcast is all about box sets we've created of our favorite films and TV shows. Some you've seen, some you haven't, and others you may never want to watch. However, we can say if you've never seen Con Air, put the bunny back in the basket. It's back in the box. And you would get it wrong. Right, I'll just stop there. If you've never seen Con Air, put the bunny back in the box. All we want to do is chat on about these films and TV shows we love so dearly, and maybe, just maybe, watch it if you can.
Cue music.
Cue music. Da-da-da-da-da. Liam,
Dave,
we've got guests.
got guests.
So we have the Film Thingy podcast with us. We have John and Matt. How are we, guys?
Hello, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're really looking forward to this. We're big fans of the show. We follow you on Instagram. We watch all your videos. Does one of you or both of you that someone want to tell us just, how did it begin?
You letting me go first
I'm
again?
gonna let you
Thank
go.
you.
Yeah.
Even
On a
if I like
roll.
tonight.
Yes, that is nice. And also just put the pressure on me, doesn't it? That's great. So John and I met about 8 years ago, maybe something like that, when we were both working in retail, selling suits, measuring up people for suits. And it was a struggle to work there. Yeah, bleak. So we would sort of chat about
I've just got
writing.
visions of Fast Show now. Just that's all I can think of.
The amount, but you'd be alarmed how many times per day that would get
I'd
referenced by
imagine so,
every
yeah.
customer. Is painful.
And there was a couple of members of staff that were basically sketch characters as well, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we started. I sort of found out that John was doing a bit of writing, and I'd done a bit of writing in the past as well. And we sort of decided to collaborate a bit. So we started writing a sitcom and a few bits and pieces. Like I said, this was about 8 years ago. We maybe wrote for a year or two, I think, and then we didn't speak for 5 or 6 years. And then we
I feel like there's a story there somewhere.
The funny thing is, there isn't.
we just
decided that we weren't going to speak.
we both got different jobs and sort of moved on in life. In all fairness, and it's cliche, but life kind of got in the way a bit.
Yeah.
And then we just sort of struck up a sort of a conversation. I think you'd messaged me on LinkedIn or somewhere, and just fell back into it really quickly. Fell back into writing again. Really keen to catch up with each other. This was probably about 2
years ago.
From now. And yeah, we started writing a sitcom. We have a couple of sitcoms on the go. I think we've probably got maybe like 3 or so pilots and treatments under our belt at the minute. Writing sketches, and then we just suddenly we thought it was Silence of the Lambs that we'd talked about. I don't want to bury the lead there, but I
think how it happened was we were trying to figure out a joke or something for a scene in this sketch, and we'd referenced a scene in the film that we didn't necessarily think made a lot of sense, and we sort of decided there was another way or another reason that this happened in the film, which we both found hilarious because we find ourselves hilarious, obviously. We're the only ones that do, and then that kind of spawned the idea for the podcast, really, because we never intended to do a podcast, did we?
No, it wasn't on the cards. We were quite happy just writing and trying to get stuff out there. But then we just realised that, it's quite a quick, instant gratification in terms of creativity. You can get something recorded and broadcast quite quickly and see if people are interested. Same with putting sketches on social media and that sort of thing.
That quote Kevin Smith said about it's almost punk. Podcasts are so punky. You don't have to be talented or good at it. You just record something and put something out.
Make a thing, innit?
Yeah.
So what were some of your sitcom titles?
Sorry?
What were some of your sitcom titles?
The first one was When It Rains.
Which later became Never Dull.
Oh, yes, it did.
In all fairness, because it's never dull in Hull is the expression, if you're not familiar. Everything's Hull based. That's obviously where we're from.
The one that we're working on at the minute is not Hull based. It's based in the north, but we're branching out slightly.
And as yet untitled, but we refer to it as the documentary at the minute.
So where did the Film Thingy podcast, where did that originate? Not just the title, but just the whole idea.
Well, I think once we'd had this sort of vague idea that we had a bit of a niche idea for this other way that this film ended, or this part of the film sort of potentially changed how the film could work, we sort of figured out that might be the niche that we could do for our podcast, because we love talking about films, but I think more so we really enjoy comedy or trying to make people laugh and writing comedy. So we always sort of wanted the angle of it being more of a comedy podcast than a movie podcast, although we absolutely love movies and TV. So we sort of were trying to find a way that we could sort of merge the two together. And then when we were talking about it, we couldn't, and we still can't, hence this really long answer, but we still can't really, we were really struggling to describe that part of a film that is much more trivial than a full plot hole. Because a plot hole in our minds changes the direction of a film or the ending of the film, whereas a film thingy is something that's really minor that could still happen isolated in the film and not change the outcome of the film. So
the more trivial and insignificant it is, the more we latch onto it, because it just doesn't matter. But if we can explode it,
Ultron one I was listening to, and it's the bit where he's just sat in the pond or whatever,
just naked.
I was like, I remember when I was listening to it, I was pissing myself. I was like, it is such a pointless scene. It doesn't really add anything to the film, but it's like you made a 20-minute podcast about this scene, and I was just chuckling to myself while I was listening to it. It's just like,
this is it. When we go into it, we don't really have an idea about where it's going to go. We know what one of us will find the thingy, and we're recording series 2 at the minute where we're asking guests to try and find the thingy. So that makes it even harder for us to come to a sort of a solution of how it ends up, because we just sort of make it up on the spot. But all the way through, we're sort of trying to describe it, and we're saying, that thingy bit that we keep talking about. And I think the word thingy then just stuck, to be honest. And we're really bad at sort of creating names. I think we've noticed over the time where we've been writing together, or titles for projects and things. We always kind of struggle for names, so we can't. I think that just kind of stuck, and we just ran with it, to be honest.
So how have you picked the films that you've done so far then?
It's normally John finding a thing, isn't it? It's normally John
working from
working, quote unquote, whilst he watches something, and they'll send me a text and say, "I'm just watching whatever. Found a thing. I think I found a thingy. I'll watch it again later properly to confirm." I think I've maybe found 2 or 3 of them out of the batch that we've done so far. And
you had Dark Knight Rises, which is one of my favorite episodes.
I won't spoil
that was all you. So you can
yeah,
have that one.
that one.
You can have that one.
Whole series.
There's definitely another one. But yeah, I think it just comes from we just watch TV like you guys. You know, we'll just crack on watching whatever we fancy watching, and I think it's really hard now not to look out for them, because it was kind of unintentional at first. And the first few that were recorded were just observation from watching some of our favorite films, and then now we're kind of going the other way and actively sort of looking for them, which makes it hard to enjoy the film as a neutral when you
can't enjoy any film anymore.
No, I've ruined cinema for myself. But we try and pick films that everyone likes. You know, we've never, and we've said this on a couple of the episodes, we've never covered an episode of a movie that we dislike. So we don't try and sort of go in on people's good work, because so much work goes into TV and film, and the amount of people and the money that goes into it to make a film. So usually, I don't want to say the thing is can be sort of, you know, it's all in the edit, or, you know, that's the obvious answer. Obviously, if someone's just made a bad editing job of that particular scene or something. But
it's not a goof, is it? It's not a mistake. It's quite often, I always say, there's what's called creative coincidence as well. There's always something, you know, in the creative process that's like, in real life you think, well, you just go along with it because that's suspended belief. It's film, it's TV. Just run with it. It doesn't matter.
But I like the idea that you're very similar to us in picking films that you want to talk about that you like. So, you know, ours is all, you know, watch it if you can, because the things that we don't like, people might really enjoy.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't want to be in that situation where people are going like, you know, like there's a lot of franchises we don't like, but we love the Marvel franchise. And it's really annoying at the moment with these people that are kind of like taking a bit of like joy out of the fact that Marvel's not doing very well. It's kind of like, well,
I did hear you guys talking about that in
franchises we don't like, you know.
I heard you guys talking about that in your last episode, or one of the most recent ones, the Misery episode, where you're talking about the Marvels.
Yeah.
And I've not seen it, but I'm well aware of how public people are going to sort of take it apart pretty much and stop people watching it. And it's, why does it matter? Like, just go and enjoy it for what it is. It's a film, you know, you're meant to enjoy it. You
have bought a film that you love. What we'd love you to do, though, on your podcast, you do introduce the film together. which always does make me laugh every time. So we dive right in. What film have you bought for us then?
Shall I do the preamble as well?
You're gonna have to if we're doing it the same way.
If I do something along the lines of, we're talking Foster, we're talking Hopkins, we're talking having an old friend for dinner. It's
Silence
of the Lambs.
So for our listener then, Silence of the Lambs, it's a 1991 American psychological horror thriller, directed by Jonathan Demme, written by Ted Talley. It's adapted from the Thomas Harris 1988 novel of the same name. So we're going to talk about the actors, we're going to talk about the characters, but centers around Clarice Starling. She's a young FBI trainee. She's brought in to assist with the hunt of a serial killer called Buffalo Bill. And we have Dr. Hannibal Lecter. He's an imprisoned psychiatrist who Starling seeks help. And Lecter is a serial killer with a taste for his victims, which is fair to say. So why Silence of the Lambs?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think collectively, this is probably in our top 3 or 5 films between us both. Yeah. When we were sort of talking about what film we were going to talk about, there was a couple of other ones, Jaws being another one that we were sort of on the fence with. But I think this is in my top 3 films. And Matt, I know it's not top 3 for you, but it's definitely up there as one of your favorite films. So it's one of those films that we could talk all day about pretty much, and not necessarily saying we know a lot about it, but we could talk a lot about it. And we both really enjoy it. And I could watch it every day and enjoy it just as much. It's such a good film.
Anyway, you're working there.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm loath to say it's a perfect film because no film is perfect, but everything about it is good. It's got a really good, really tight cast. It's not like there's loads of people and it's not a big ensemble piece. It's just a handful of actors really doing a good job. The script's good. The characters, every single character, just when they were reading the script, must have just jumped off the page because they're just so well written and they're so distinct. It's got good mystery to it, and it's suspenseful throughout. It never really lets up, despite not really having any. There's maybe one or two action sequences, and even then, it's a lot more left to your imagination rather than it being, in your face gore. I know there's a particularly gory scene during the escape, which I'll probably talk about a bit later. But yeah, it just keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout, and it just builds and builds and builds until you get to that like climactic final scene, which I won't go on about now. But I agree with John. I could probably watch it, maybe not every day, maybe every week, every couple of weeks.
So one of the reasons I was so happy when you said Silence of the Lambs is Liam's not a big fan of those horror, gore, any sort of like. You like a thriller, don't you? But not with any level of.
Do you know what's
intensity?
What's quite funny about this is I haven't watched it since I was a teenager. When we were that age, I've got a sister who's like 2 years older than me. We were that age before we could go out, but we were too old to have a babysitter. My mum used to work, and my sister would bring all her mates round, which I had no problem sitting in a room full of teenage girls. But we used to always watch films, and it was always Dirty Dancing or Silence of the Lambs. So it was the first time. To be fair, I'd rather watch Dirty Dancing still.
I'm guessing this is VHS, so it's probably literally the only 2 VHS they own.
But it's been, so must be about 13, 14. I'm now
really
44 since I've last seen it. So
that's because you were so mortified by it at the time.
Yeah, I just don't watch. It's not type of film I'd watch. But I watched it not last night. It's such a good film. It is. It's been a while since, 30 years since I've seen it.
It's a great
brilliant
choice. I do like I don't mind a horror at all. But I do like a psychological thriller as well.
There's a lot of bits that didn't really get onto. I thought it was, you think you're a person of the world at 12, 13, not.
Yeah.
That's now you've revisited it.
Yeah.
So the cast then, should we start with like Jodie Foster? I mean, what a performance.
Yeah.
Some of the things that, for our listener, they might know Jodie Foster from. The ones I picked is kind of like, I really liked him in Inside Man.
That was one of the ones I was going to say. She's fantastic in Inside Man. Yeah.
Flight Plan.
Know of it, not seen it.
No.
I can't remember if I've seen it or not.
I was going to say Panic Room. Have I got mixed up between Panic Room?
Well, I've got Panic Room as well. Flight Plan has got Sean Bean in as well. It's based.
Sean Bean.
Yeah.
And Jodie Foster.
Gets all over the place, doesn't he?
It's a mashup.
Did he die in it?
I don't want to spoil it.
Did Sean Bean die in it?
He dies in everything,
That's
doesn't
what I mean.
He fakes his death. It's like a double bluff.
He dies in the first 10 minutes or something like that.
We mentioned sort of Mel Gibson earlier when we were chatting to me. Maverick, I think, is a great film.
I've got Maverick on my list.
I've seen that a few times when I was younger.
And just because it's a link to one of our podcast episodes, apparently she must have been a voice on the phone, but she was in an episode of Frasier. So we always try and link. We always trying to find some link to episodes that we've done.
She was in Bugsy Malone, right, as well.
I've got Bugsy
Malone.
Yeah,
she was when she was in her teens, like young teens, I think.
She was a teen actor, wasn't she? She was in quite a lot when she was in sort of her, when she was a child.
She was in Taxi Driver,
yeah.
I didn't realise.
Yeah. Which one have I got? That Freaky Friday.
The original Freaky Friday.
Yeah, she's in that as a teenager as well. But the ones I've got is The Accused. I think that's the one that sort of put her in the limelight. The one where she did rape victim. I think that was just before Silence Alarm. That was the one I seem to remember. It was a big film at the time.
Yeah, she must have been maybe 18
Yeah.
or something in that, wasn't
Yeah.
she? I mean, I think in Taxi Driver, is she only about 16, 17
Kid,
or
yeah.
something? She's
She's
really
young,
young, isn't she?
Kid, yeah.
What was the one that you watched recently on Netflix?
Oh, Naiad with Annette Bening.
Not seen that one either.
I haven't seen that
So
yet.
it's based. It's the Annette Bening plays this ex-swimmer who does distance swimming, and she does this challenge, and Jodie Foster's her partner in it, and like her sort of mentor and manager. They're both brilliant in it. It's on Netflix, very recent actually. Really
Because
good
she
film.
won the Academy Award. So was Panic Room going to be one of your suggestions then, John? Were you saying?
It was going to be one of the ones that, yeah, if you're a fan of Jodie Foster and you like that sort of psychological thriller, I think Panic Rooms is up. I haven't seen it for a little while, so I don't know if it's dated or if it still holds up. But at the time, I remember thinking it was a great film.
It's I'm trying to think who directs now. Same director as Seven, isn't it? It's
David Fincher.
David Fincher.
Fincher.
Yeah. You want to watch it because it comes across too scary.
Is it too scary?
I think it's too scary for you. Yeah.
That's
The
why I like
situation.
Bugsy Malone.
So, Liam, would you class? So I know you're not a fan of horror, but would you class Silence of the Lambs then as a horror or like or a thriller? Because it's
Well,
for me, it's sort of teetering, flirting with the both of them, isn't it?
it's psychological, and if I'm honest, I have no interest in horror films where it's just slash. Like when it wasn't good, the boring, but the psychological tension films, I just don't enjoy. I don't enjoy like the bit where she goes into the lockup and she goes in and finds the head in there.
That's the head, yeah.
That just kills me. I can't watch the scene, and I know what happens. Like even when I watched it the other night, I was like sort of pretending to go and get a drink, just like I was kind of watching it on my own.
Don't like it. I don't think it's even the horror side. It's just
Tension.
like the horrors in like finding the head and stuff. It's you probably were more scared in the build up to actually finding the head.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good job of throughout the whole film. I think it doesn't treat the audience as stupid, and it does a lot of. I think me and Matt talk about this quite a lot with a few of those sort of classic films where they rinse absolutely everything out of every scene, they sort of leave so much to the imagination. Similar to Hannibal Lecter as a character, on some of those sort of slightly gorier scenes, you don't actually see a great deal, but the camera angle or what you can hear is really impactful as a viewer. You know exactly what's going on, but you don't see it. And I think that's just such a good way of doing the film, and you don't see a lot of that these days, I don't think. So
Anthony Hopkins, he won the Oscar for it as well. Have you got, before I go into mine, have you got any of your what's your favourites, Matt, of Anthony Hopkins apart from this?
You guys, I'm going to lower the tone big time because he's obviously such a well-respected actor. But I'm going to say Bram Stoker's Dracula.
He was even in that.
He plays Van Helsing in it.
Yeah, no.
And I'm also gonna lower the tone somehow even further and say The Mask of Zorro, where he plays the old Zorro.
Mask of Zorro. Yeah.
That was a childhood favourite of mine.
That was a great film.
Yeah.
But recently, Westworld. He's amazing in the first series of Westworld. Is he in the first one and then he's in the second one as like flashbacks? But yeah, really, really good in Westworld. And a really good first couple of series.
Got cancelled, didn't it?
Has it been cancelled now?
Yeah. So, sorry to break the news, Matt.
I didn't watch the latest series anyway.
Yeah.
Aaron
Paul was in like the last 2 series, I think, and it's been cancelled. Westworld's a great shout. Actually, I didn't put Westworld, and I'm kicking myself now. I mean, obviously he's in 4, isn't he? He's old, and I've gone with Remains of the Day for 1993.
And Howard's End.
Yeah.
He did 2, but see, he does those sorts of Victorian repressed films so well because a good actor can do something in just a look and a turn. And it was very soap opera-ish, but he does it like
he's a proper thespian, isn't he?
Yeah, you can just go.
A few good turns in this.
Yeah,
There's some excellent turns.
Like, he doesn't have to hammer up. He can just like the way he just moves his head away, and you're like, oh, that's so good. And it's like I actually knew someone. He was my old tutor when I was years ago in college. Went to see Anthony Hopkins do a one-man show.
Oh wow!
And it's just Anthony Hopkins on stage for like an hour doing this like monologue. And at one bit he cries in it. And I remember my tutor Tony said he was like literally on like 2 rows in from the front. And he said it was the most intense thing in his life. He said he was just ball in his eye.
When was this? Like, how old was Anthony? Because Anthony Hopkins is about 80 odd now.
Yeah, I
He's
think
probably knocking on 90 now, I think,
Yeah.
isn't he?
Really?
So it must have been. It was when I was in college in the mid-90s. So it might have been. I think it might have been before Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
But like he said, it was an intense. Just seeing him live in person. But Tony was my tutor. He was great for telling stories. He's going on about this intense scene of Anthony Hopkins, which is all I can remember. He was sat next to these two old women and they were eating sweets, but they had the box of Maltesers. But as the box got empty and empty, all you could hear with the Maltesers rolling from one end of the box to the other as he was
I'm surprised Anthony Hopkins didn't just come down and slap him, to be honest.
I know, but he said that's all he remembers, the Maltesers.
Have you got any favourites, John?
Yeah, I mean, Silence of the Lambs is the favourite, but he's done some other really good stuff. The Father with Olivia Colman. He did a few years.
That as well, didn't he?
I think he did. I was nominated. I'm one of the two, but that's that's completely different role, obviously. But that's what I would call, and I don't know what I mean by this, but I know what I mean, proper acting. You know, there's no bells and whistles on the film. It's just really good storytelling. There's a couple of nice little twists, but it's just really small cast and him just acting his socks off, really. So that's a fantastic one. And also, I watched it a few days ago, Fracture, with him and Ryan Gosling, which I think is really underrated film, which is a bit of is more of a psychological thriller, a lot less scary than Silence of the Lambs, a lot less creepy. It's more of like a psychological courtroom drama, I guess. But those two, I think, are really some of his one underrated and one that he got really praised for, which I think are two of my favourites, other than Silence of the Lambs.
I don't think he's bad in anything, though, does he? I mean, it might be some films where you think that the film itself isn't great. I mean, remember, was it Bad Company, though, with Chris Rock? It's not a great film, but you can watch Anthony Hopkins all day. You know,
he's very engaging in anything he does.
Yeah,
I think he did another one where there's something about an exorcist or something. What was it? He was playing like a priest, or I don't know. Maybe I've just made this up.
Have you got any other Anthony Hopkins ones?
No, Amistad was the one I was going to mention, and obviously, you know, we'll probably talk about the sort of sequels to this, but obviously Hannibal and Red Dragon.
Well, we have missed one absolute whopper.
Oh, go on.
The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
He's the narrator, right?
I didn't even realise he was the narrator.
Yeah,
that's the Jim Carrey one, isn't it?
The Jim Carrey one.
Yeah, he's the narrator. Yeah.
Oh, he deserves awards just for that, doesn't he?
So, I only watched it for the first time this Christmas.
There's a few other actors in it. I mean, Ted Levine, obviously, Buffalo Bill. I've got him from Shutter Island. He's in Fast and Furious. Evolution. You see that? Yeah,
that's a great film.
And then obviously the big one is Heat. What about you, Matt? Again, have you got any favourites for Ted Levine?
Not beyond that. I mean, I know you guys mentioned that he's in Monk as well, but I mean that's casting my mind back away to watching that on daytime TV. But no, I mean we do. I will say that we do have a soft spot for him in Fast and Furious, don't we, John?
Yes, yeah, we do. We just it's just there.
He's just there. What a review for him in that film. He's just there.
He's on the poster.
But I think given how big of a role Buffalo Bill was for him, presumably, although he's not in it a lot of the film, similar to Hannibal Lecter, who's not in it for much of the film, but his character plays a huge part. You'd think that actually he would have maybe gone on to done slightly more bigger roles, but and I don't, not to sound disrespectful, but obviously everything I'm seeing him in is sort of smaller parts, which maybe he deserves a little bit better. I don't know. Flubber.
I agree.
I'm pretty sure he was one of the henchmen in Flubber.
He was in American Gangster as well with Denzel Washington.
Good film, very good film. And Russell
Crowe. Yeah. But again, he's one of them. I was looking on his IMDb. Since Silence of the Lambs, he has worked very steadily. Really, but again, we've spoke about these actors before. I love actors like this. They're never main actors. I know he's one of the big cast in Monk, but I love actors which are really good actors. They just have a really fantastic
always
career.
Working, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any gaps
really
in his career if you kind of go on. Like IMDb seems to be our favorite place for anything, to be honest, movie related, and you can just get lost for ages. And then we tend to find when we're doing this, you find a lot of films where you go, oh, I've actually never seen that, and I didn't know they were in it, and I'm going to sort of check it out. Scott Glenn, Jack Crawford, he's another one I think that fits into that. He's never really he's never the first name on the call sheet, is he? But he's in loads of movies.
I've just realised I can sit back.
You can sit back and get comfy if you want.
I'm totally free, comfy. I was going to say Scott Glenn. He's Stick in the Daredevil TV series.
Yes, he is.
And I probably wouldn't have made the connection necessarily because he's quite a bit older and the character's obviously totally different. But I think he's great. Obviously, that's a great. You guys have said that you're big Marvel fans, so I'm going to assume that you're fans of the Daredevil series. But he is great in that.
He's really good in that, and he pops up in the Defenders one with they all join up together. Yeah.
But I've not got anything else down for him really. I've
got a few things that he's been in. Again, sort of linking to our episodes because we have done Misery and Stand By Me, a couple of Stephen King's. He was in the TV series for Castle Rock. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see that. It did get cancelled after like 2 series, but he was in 8 episodes of that. And also he's in The Leftovers. You ever seen The Leftovers?
I don't think so.
I really wanted to. What it's who's the main character in it? I'm completely blanking on Justin Theroux.
Justin Theroux, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be awful then and say the guy that used to be married to Jennifer Aniston. That's such a terrible way to describe someone, isn't it?
I would be quite happy known as that.
Yeah.
That was your only claim to fame with the West.
Yes, well, I'll take that.
Yeah, but I know I think I maybe watched the first one and just didn't quite get into it. But I said it's really
massive promotion. I seem to remember when it came out. It was one of them where I saw billboards for it everywhere.
It was the big HBO show at the time, but
it just seemed to disappear.
Well, no, it's got a bit of a cult audience because it's a little bit like Lost.
I was going to say it followed on from that sort of Lost, like mystery, people, character-driven sort of.
It's excellent, if you can get into it and you can stick with it, and there is an explanation for kind of what happens in the series. Whereas Lost kind of give you an explanation of what was great, but I could have said Louis Theroux's cousin, but I was going to say Jennifer Aniston's ex.
We all knew what you meant.
Yeah, a couple of movies though for Scott Glenn: Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Backdraft. You've never seen Backdraft, John?
I've not seen it. I know of it. It's not Fireman, right?
And is it one of the Baldwins? One of the Baldwins. Robert De Niro's in it.
I don't think I've ever heard of it,
Oh, John, you're going to have to check this out.
Sorry.
Have you seen
that's
it?
On the list.
No, I'll own up. I've not seen it either, but I actually have heard of it, unlike John. So I feel like I get a point for that.
Film. Just purely for the scenes, even with Donald Sutherland and Robert De Niro, it's worth watching.
Good film. He's also in Training Day. Denzel Washington, I don't think it's a big part, but he's in that.
Right, okay. I don't remember being in it. But again, he's one of those actors that's in so many things.
He's in Poplix now as well.
Really? Yeah.
Again, he's had a fantastic career, but you wouldn't know him. Most people wouldn't even know his name.
I'm pretty sure he's in a couple of the Bond films as like one of the suits from the CIA, or I think I'm sure he's in the first Bond film as someone who just gives the orders, That's it. This character, just give the orders.
It's also, I think the test is like, if you can show him pictures to my mum and she doesn't know his name, that probably means he's in loads of things, but she just doesn't have a clue. Another one I wanted to mention was Brooke Smith. She's the one that plays Catherine Martin, the one that Buffalo Bill kidnaps.
The senator's daughter.
She's in another Stephen King show. She's in Bates Motel. Just a link to Stephen King. She's in a few episodes of Bosch, and she was in about 13 episodes of Ray Donovan as well.
Yes, that's where I know her from, apart from this. Yeah, in the past series, right?
And I also recognised her from Grey's Anatomy, because I was encouraged to watch all of that, the entire thing, all 21 series or whatever it is, by my wife. Yeah.
How many episodes per series is that?
About 24, I think it is.
So you've watched around 200 episodes.
I've calculated it in hours before because she's had the audacity at the time to say, you make me watch all these Marvel films. Like, I'll go and watch all the Marvel films with you. And I go, we've still got such an hour deficit of the number of Grey's Anatomy episodes that we've watched. You still owe me my choices.
You owe me 30
years.
hours.
Is the main guy still in it, or is it all new cast now?
I think most of them are been replaced. I don't know if any of the originals are still in it.
Is it a bit
Actually.
like ER, where it's like by the end it was like, I think there was only like one.
I don't even know if I've ever watched an episode of Grey's Anatomy.
If you've watched one, you've watched them all.
Yeah, I've seen Casualty. That kind of sounds like
that'll do. Yeah. Imagine Catherine Martin in Casualty, and then you've got Grey's Anatomy.
So, just one other actor I was going to mention was Anthony Heald. He plays the Dr. Frederick Chilton. I only really know him. He was a judge in a few episodes of Boston Legal. That's kind of the main thing I know him from. But you had a good one for.
He's been Postcards from the Edge, which
Carrie Fisher wrote.
Yeah, and Rob Reiner is in it. So we love Rob Reiner, by the way.
Big Rob Reiner fan.
And he's also been in both Cheers and Frasier. We have this thing, the amount of times we find actors have appeared in Frasier and Cheers, it's become a little bit of a thing, hasn't it? But he's been in one episode of Cheers and one episode of Frasier.
And I've just rewatched Cheers and I don't remember, but I do remember him in Frasier. So that's the actors that are in it. So should we go to Matt first? Who's your favourite character in the movie and or performance, and why?
It's such a. I've been dreading this question because it's such a hard because it is such a small cast. There really are only 5 main characters realistically, if you want to call them main characters, and they're all really good in their own right. Everyone absolutely smashes it, and it's nice that it's so well balanced between there's 2 strong female characters. I know that Clarice is obviously the lead, but Catherine's also a strong female character, even though she's the victim. But I'll hold my hands up and say it's got to be Hannibal Lecter for this film. Have I beat you to it, John? Are you disagreeing or are you annoyed that?
Go on, tell us why though first, Matt.
I don't think you can argue with the fact that he spent what's the statistic? Is it 16 minutes on screen or whatever it is, and he wins the Oscar for it? I don't think you can argue with that sort of a result. Every second he is on screen, you cannot keep your eyes off him. It's a performance. For me, it's probably his performance in this film led to the funding and production of the 2 sequels past it, and because they're not as good quality wise, but just him carrying them, I think, and it's all based on his utterly captivating performance for a person who eats people, which you shouldn't like.
Really likable.
But you do. I'm like,
that's
I
it.
don't like rooting for him. I think that's a bit much. Rooting for him's a bit much.
You don't.
At the end, you're like, yeah, go on, go and get Chilton. Go on, follow him.
That's it. They made Chilton into. I mean, there's 3 villains effectively, isn't there? Because obviously you've got Buffalo Bill, Chilton, and Hannibal Lecter, and they kind of make him almost the least offensive of all the villains. Maybe that's why. But I agree with you. I think you are kind of like, you're not mad that he's escaped at the end.
It's not your stereotypical villain. Is is very polite, is very likable. So when he's doing these awful things, or when you hear that he's done these awful things, you don't automatically sort of hate him, which is, I think, the way that he brings that across in his mannerisms and his tone and everything is just really good acting at making him a really likable villain, even though he's done obscene things.
What did you guys make of Brian Cox's performances as Lecter in Manhunter?
I've only seen it once years ago, and it's not bad, but it's not on the same level, in my opinion, in terms of quality. I mean,
the only reason I bring it up, because I do really like the Brian Cox version, because I think Brian Cox though is like he's a lot more physical in it because he's a big kind of buff guy.
Yeah,
but I think like rewatching Silence of the Lambs, because in my head it's always been, I've always kind of liked the idea that the Brian Cox version physically was believable that he could kill these people. But when we rewatched the film last night, I was thinking, no, do you know what? Anthony Hopkins is so terrifying, isn't he? And like he is quite buff in it, actually, isn't he? For like
he's lean, isn't he?
lean, yeah. And
the way he holds himself,
everything I'd previously sort of thought as well.
He's got like almost a supernatural presence as well, I think, in it, which makes him even more terrifying and believable in that. Oh, he could probably do, you know, when he's
and it's the not blinking
people
well,
and all that. Yeah, there is something almost inhuman about him that's really unsettling.
I read that bit about Blink and Hopkins. I got the idea he's got a friend who never blinked and used to weird everyone out, so he remembered that when he was filming.
And he used that.
It is really weird, people who don't blink. I'm like,
I've never noticed it does that, but now you've said it, there's a lot of, even when if you Google his most famous scenes from the film, is always really wide-eyed, isn't he? And you know,
I think he blinks for dramatic purpose at certain moments. So he's blink. It's almost like he's doing it on purpose to sort of. It's a genius performance by Anthony Hopkins.
But John doesn't agree. John's got a different favourite character. Not that you don't agree, you just got a different favourite character, I suppose.
No, I do agree. I just don't know what I'm going to say now. I disagree, Matt. I'm going to say,
Precious the dog. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I am actually torn because I would say I agree with Matt, but Buffalo Bill and Clarice Starling are both very, obviously Clarice has a lot more screen time than probably anyone in the film, and she does. So I will. Yeah, there's no quick answer. I'm really sorry, guys.
No, that's okay.
Clarice Starling over Buffalo Bill. Buffalo Bill, for the same reason, would have been just the impact it has on screen in a very short amount of time. And he has one of the most memorable scenes of movie history as well, when he does the old dick tuck situation. But Clarice Starling, I think, given the character and the way the character develops and how she portrays that, where she's obviously got her own demons and etc. And she's using, well, they're both using each other out. Hannibal and Clarice are both using each other to get what they want, effectively. And I think they both know that. But I think as she grows into as the character grows into the situation with, you know, the senator's daughter going missing and all that sort of stuff, I think she plays vulnerable but strong really well in quite a nice balance, to be fair. So I think Jodie Foster, probably her most famous role, to be fair, but it's my favourite role of hers as well because of that. So I'll challenge Matt's Hannibal Lecter with Clarice Starling.
So Michelle Pfeiffer turned this down, didn't she?
Apparently so, yeah.
There's got to be, yeah. I'm kind of glad. So apparently Michelle Pfeiffer turned it down, and then they were talking about potentially Meg Ryan, and I just think both wouldn't have been the same performance at all.
I think it's the same with Hannibal Lecter. Hopkins wasn't first choice, was he? There was a few sort of bigger names above him, like Hollywood stars.
Gene Hackman bought the rights for the novel. That's what I read, because he wanted to originally do it, and then I think he sort of changed his mind.
No, well, Gene Hackman was going to be the Jack Crawford character,
right?
And when he read the final script, it was too violent for him, and he opted out. So even though they sort of own the rights, he didn't want to.
Had he not read the book?
No.
The book he bought the rights to. It's really violent.
Again, I don't know how true this is, but one of the stories is one of the original people he wanted was Sean Connery.
Yes, that's the one name I do know, to be fair. Which I can't even imagine it. I cannot imagine him playing Hannibal Lecter.
It wouldn't have been the same, would it?
He would have had the same voice he uses and everything.
It would have been Sean Connery.
Yeah, it would have been Sean Connery playing Hannibal.
And it would have been
pulled in a suit in prison.
It wouldn't have quite worked. This one's always a tough one then, especially when you talk about a film that you really love. So, John, what's your favourite scene or moment in the film?
This one's easy for me, actually. Okay. My favourite scene of the film is when Hannibal and Clarice first meet, and they're just sort of sussing each other out, and she takes the questionnaire, and he looks at it, and it's just how creepy he is, but really likable at the same time, and he's grinning at her through the glass, and he then obviously gives us a clue to go to the garage, and I just think that first interaction with them sets up kind of the tone for the rest of the film about what you can expect about out of that relationship, where they're going to keep pushing each other and prodding to try and get what they want out of each other. they're both clearly, obviously Clarice is there on orders, whereas Lecter susses her out instantly because he would, and he obviously uses that to his advantage to get moved and then ultimately escape, which is all part of his bigger plan. But it's not one of the most memorable scenes in terms of what happens, but it's just my favorite scene in terms of the dialogue, in terms of those two just acting opposite each other. I think it's a fantastic scene.
It's the way he's just standing there ready as well, isn't he?
Just cold, yeah. He's got really good posture. Annoyingly good posture. It's just sort of, doesn't move. Yeah,
there is that. I think you said it before, Matt. There's like the bit of a vampire element, isn't it? And I think that scene when she first comes round and he's there waiting, it is like he's risen, like not stood up. He's just risen, hasn't he? What's yours, Matt?
I probably got a couple, and I'll give a special mention just to the escape scene, because I do think that it's one of the sort of most high octane that the film gets, I think, and it's all a really well shot bit of action, but actually my favorite scene is just the opening scene. Just all the fog creeping through the woods and jogging, and I think it just sets. It's an iconic scene. I'm sure it's been parodied in comedy shows. Like, I'm sure there's a Family Guy one and all sort of Simpsons one, and it just I think it just sets the tone for the film and what's going to be happening perfectly. That sort of maybe slightly supernatural element, the suspense and that sort of level of atmosphere that never really relents throughout the film. I think you get it all in that first scene, and obviously then you get introduced to Clarice, and you sort of get a bit of her background. And what I will say as well, this isn't specifically on the scene, but if I can just sidestep a little bit, as a film, I think it kind of hits quite a lot of what would now be classed as tropes of the sort of serial killer cop. She's a rookie cop. All that sort of it hits a load of tropes, but because this came out 30 years ago, it's actually the originator of a lot of these sort of tropes, and I find that there's a reason why so many of these things got picked up and people started to use these parodies or cheap copies of the characters or the story, whatever. But yeah, sorry, I know I've gone on a tangent, but that opening scene for me is probably my favourite.
I've got a couple, but what are yours?
I've got, and it's not even a scene, it's a shot. It's the bit where you first come back to Lecter after he's killed the guards, and it's the camera looking down, and it's the tape recorder, and you just see the blood, and it just slowly pans out, and he's just standing there like waving to the music.
Yeah,
he's just killed.
Doesn't bush, does he?
And it's just like and it's like, and it's just the way it pans out. It gets me every time. I think it's just a fantastic piece of filmmaking, because again, the violence was a lot off screen. You heard it or the initial bit, but then you just see the aftermath of it, and it's like, oh, he's a brute.
Do you think now this, as you said, a lot of the bounce off the screen? Do you think the scene where he's in the cage and he just calls out the police officer's name, doesn't he? We don't know at that point he's going to cut his face off. But do you think films would show that now, though?
I think so.
Shock factor.
I think so. I think maybe a bit less daring, a bit more keen to get the box office numbers up, and just it's like John said earlier. There's a general feeling that we have when we talk about films that audiences are not treated as intelligently these days. Not all films. There's a lot of really good films made where they are intelligent, but a lot of the big blockbuster films, I think, treat the audience as quite sort of like they can't really follow the story, so they'll just give them those shocks, and they'll give them all the story beats, and they'll over-explain it. And I agree. I think they'd show that in a lot more detail, just even if it means that the age certificate goes up. They'd probably just leave it in.
I think as well, though, these days, obviously you've got the power of sort of social media, haven't you? And I think so. I know I'm with Liam. To be fair, is like horror is my proper horror is my least favorite genre of film. I love the classics like The Shining and The Exorcist and even Jaws to a point where you don't see quite as much and it's all really effective. But I think these days, like gore fest films don't really interest me, if I'm honest. And I think like Saltburn is a perfect example of something happening in the scene that you maybe not expecting and everybody talking about it. Have you guys seen Saltburn?
So I've heard, I've been told all the scenes. So a friend of mine watched it and sort of said to me, I don't think you'll like it, so I'm going to tell you what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good film. It's a good film, and there's a few bits that everybody's talking about for obvious reasons. But it's not really that bad. But it's because you don't normally see it in a film.
I've just seen a really hilarious video on Instagram or whatever it is the other day, and it's someone's daughter had told her dad to watch it, and it's his WhatsApp voice notes as it comes through the film. He's like, and it just gets, oh my god. It's like, he's doing this, he's doing that, and then it just goes, that's it, I'm out, I'm done. It's just, she made us dad watch it.
I do think this is a different film if it's made in the last 5 years.
I agree.
Completely different film.
Yeah.
My favorite, I've done a couple. You mentioned about the whole escape scene. I mean, that must be about what, 10 minutes long, do you think?
Yeah, it's quite a
15
long.
minutes,
Which is bold, isn't it? To find in like just in the middle of this like film, Clarice suddenly is out the picture for a whole section of the film, and it's just like an amazing film. When the whole bit where the SWAT team arrive and then they think he's in the elevator and stuff, the whole like shoot him in the leg and stuff. That whole section from start to end for me is just like it's perfect. It's like something from Die Hard almost, isn't it? It's like it's a great scene. The other one I want to pick out then is when Clarice is in Buffalo Bill's house and he switches the power off.
Oh yes,
yeah, that is in a great way.
It's when she can't see where she's going and she's desperately like.
And you see his hand come out to grab her. Yeah.
I just love that, and I think I imagine in the cinema at the time as well that must have been terrifying.
The noise of the glasses where he fires up the night, comes up,
the night vision.
It was.
Well, I watched the trailer because it's on Prime at the minute, and I thought I'm going to watch the trailer. I've never seen the trailer for Silence of the Lambs, and Buffalo Bill is not in it at all. Is mentioned, but you see a few snippets of the basement scene when the lights go out. But the way that it's all edited together, you're led to believe it's Hannibal Lecter that's in the basement with her. I thought it was really interesting because actually.
So is this the original trailers that's on there?
It looks that way, yeah. It's all the original footage, and it's the classic 80s, 90s voiceover of American Cop, and all these sort of just really generic narration.
FBI,
rookie FBI agent.
I bet they would have called her a girl in the trailer as well.
Probably, yeah. It's a good trailer, but it's really sort of misleading actually. So if you like, I've not read the book, and I'm aware of the book and the whole series, but if you've not read the book, actually, I imagine the real film is quite a surprise when you realize there's another serial killer in it as well. That's probably even weirder than Hannibal Lecter.
So Matt, you mentioned like the opening. So the Howard Shore did the music. He did The Fly. He did Big, and obviously is probably most famous for doing like the Lord of the Rings movies and winning. I think he won 3 Oscars. As far as the music goes, there's not a lot of sort of songs in it apart from obviously Goodbye Horses. Do you think Goodbye Horses has been ruined by the movie? Can you ever listen to that song and not think of that minute, that moment?
We play that from time to time, don't we, John? While we're writing, and purely because we're talking about the film, and we decided to put it on. There is Tom Petty song in it as well.
You don't reenact the scene.
Yeah.
No, we were
just checking.
No, we don't.
I promise we don't do that. I think you don't need to know about our writing methods.
There's no sewing machines in this room at all.
You've got a well in the back garden now, haven't you? Got a well.
Yes. And the senator's daughter's in there.
Well,
no,
song, isn't it?
Yeah. American Girl.
When she's in the car driving.
That's right.
That's a really. But I think the music's really good. I think Howard Shore's an amazing composer. When I was listening to it, when I watched it again the other day, I was like, there's some really lovely pieces of music in it.
Straight from the off. I think that, as you said, Matt, come back to you talking about the opening credits and stuff. The music that's the opening scene, the music that's playing over is really pulls you in as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It just adds to that atmosphere of it. I don't. This sounds really silly, and I think, but John, I hope John at least gets what I'm saying if he thinks he could watch it every day. But there's something quite It's a bit of a comfort movie almost, even though it's horrific.
I agree.
It's a bit of a comfort movie. It's a real cozy.
Under 2 hours as well.
Yeah, it's not too arduous to sit through and watch it.
I think that comes down to, again, what Liam said about like horror films and slasher films. Like, I wouldn't want to watch those every day, but for me, this is like psychological thrillers are kind of my comfort film, which is a bit odd, maybe. But you know, David Fincher films, and I watched a couple recently. The Morgan Freeman films, Along Came a Spider, and Kiss the Girls, and like those types of films, I find like really easy watching, even though some of the stuff that happens is quite awful. I find them really easy to engage with, and I agree. I think it is a bit of a comfort film for some reason. Not sure why.
Well, it's that same thing. They say sad music doesn't necessarily make you feel sad, so it's a similar thing, I suppose. Watching, but no, I
think the fact that it's like you said, it's it's pretty flawless. So I think that helps when you got great performances, great script. But that does lead us into the next question then, which you might not like then. What would you change?
I've got one. I don't know if you do, John, but I've definitely got one. So there's a bit that always bugs me, and it's probably not one bit, but it's certainly kind of a theme or a coincidence. Hannibal Lecter knows Buffalo Bill.
I've got that same point. Do you know what?
Go on, Matt.
I'm with you.
No, I'm pleased that you agree, because the first clue that he gives, so to fully understand it, you have to. It's not fully explained, and like we said, it doesn't treat the audience as stupid, so that they don't give you everything away and lay it all out. So you do have to piece some of it together. But as far as I understand it, Hannibal Lecter found the body of a previous victim of Buffalo Bill's and took the head and preserved it, and then he gives Clarice a clue to where it is. But that's just also coincidental that they would all know each other. Jack Crawford doesn't send Clarice there because he thinks they know each other. He goes for a basically like an FBI profile of a criminal mind, doesn't he? And I just find that it's just such a strange coincidence that happens.
Because the fake story that he tells sounds more believable, doesn't it? Which is, when he was a psychiatrist, he met someone and they told him and stuff. But obviously that doesn't turn out to be true.
Wasn't the story? Am I getting mixed up? Was Lecter patient was Buffalo Bill's partner?
Yes,
and that's how we first met him, came aware of him. But I'm with you. Hannibal Lecter's this super intelligent man, and you think he's there. He will help Clarice find him with his mind. Not to do that. He just happens to know him.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that bit I was watching to him, and I go, it's got nothing to do with his intelligence. He just knew him.
There's so many other ways that they could have done, and I haven't read the book, and I haven't read the book recently. I read it a long time ago, so I can't remember what happens in the book. But there's 100 other ways they could have written that in, where he just deduced something from a bit of evidence that she hadn't seen. She could hand him a piece of paper and he just picked something out of it, whatever. But no, he had to know him. It's really strange that.
So if I misremembered that, then doesn't Lecter tell I forgot his name now, the doctor, a bit of a spin on the story though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think
leads them off.
He gives them a false identity, doesn't he? Gives them a wrong name.
He toys with them,
right?
Especially when he speaks to the. Sorry.
I think that's a lot to do with it. Yet coincidence of him knowing what happens to Buffalo Bill, but it just adds to the thing that Lecter was just playing. He was just like, it was just fun to him.
So in Manhunter, with Lecter, he's trading notes through the papers with the guy. So the link to the kind of it is a bit more believable because they're speaking to each other. But I never. I'll be honest, I didn't really. That wasn't one of my bugbears. I
watched it the other night and I was like, because what bit that struck me, what I've just said before, is it had nothing to do with Lecter's intelligence. Like you said, you think because it's the FBI science profiling, you'd be like, I deduce it's because of X, Y, Z. It's just new.
Just new.
So what are the odds of two serial killers knowing each other?
Maybe they've cut out loads of scenes where she goes and speaks to loads of serial killers and cannibals, and he just happens to know the one that they're.
She's actually 10th on the list.
Yeah.
Like, this is the internet, so they can't all congregate in chat rooms, serial killers. Like, that's the bit I don't get. It's like,
It takes one to know one, doesn't it?
They do say it's a small world. So,
Small
you know. What about you, John? Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's one.
No, do you know what? You're not. 'Cause I have been thinking about this, and I'm the same as you. I don't really have an issue with that. I'm quite happy to sort of let it slide, and maybe it's because it's one of my favorite films, and I don't want to sort of say anything back against it. But mine's really boring. I think I'm again a little bit morbid. I kind of really find the how interesting in these sorts of things. So mine's more of a wishful. If I could change it, I would probably want to know a little bit more about like Buffalo Bill and what's happened and probably the other victims up to this point. Because when we start the film, I think he's on his 9th or 10th victim. So you kind of get a little bit through the script through the dialogue that is obviously learning his way through this, because one of the bodies was the first taken, but the third or fourth found, obviously because he struggled to weigh her down in the river or these other things. So you kind of get the gist that he's obviously learning as he goes and he's getting better at it. But obviously Lecter knows who he is, and he's sort of feeding Clarice these clues as to how she's going to catch him. And you obviously learn that there's been a lot of sort of psychological trauma in his younger years, etc. Then that stuff I find really interesting in real life as well. But I think that's why I've got such a sort of a like for psychological thrillers, because it's more realistic, I think, to rather than like these horror films. So I think it's a bit more boring. But I would have liked to have sort of. And again, maybe in the book, but I'd like to know a little bit more about Buffalo Bill and his backstory and how he's come from there all the way to here. You know,
are we collectively writing a prequel here? Are we just
Buffalo
Bill?
Well, there's a whole TV series. It's a prequel of Hannibal as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but Buffalo Bill's not. No. From what
they kind of mess with the chronology of it, don't they, in Hannibal?
Yeah.
After the first sort of 2 series, I think series 3 is sort of a bit of a mashup of
Hannibal canon. Is that the term? It's not proper canon.
Matt, you're the canon man.
I'm the canon man. I don't know that it is. I don't know if it follows on from the films or not. I don't know how closely it follows the books either, the TV.
Yeah, never read the books.
It does lead into Red Dragon, doesn't it? Because I can't remember who it is that in the series.
Yeah.
That character does come in the television series as well. Whereas I think it's Richard Armitage. Is it Richard Armitage plays him in the?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I never noticed that.
I've got a couple of things, right, but mine are just silly nitpicky things. I don't know why you needed the close-up of the handshake with Clarice and Jack at the end. For some reason, the camera they're both talking, and you just get this shot of the handshake, and I was like, don't know why you needed that. I'd gladly take that bit out if I was being really picky. And then
is that when they were celebrating?
It's like
huge cake.
Yeah,
that's all I'm looking at is the cake. And me and John talk about that a lot. There's that really nice looking massive cake.
I think we cut that out of our episode of Silent Silence, but there was about a 15-minute conversation about how big the cake was. And how can we find someone to make us the exact cake?
See, the FBI only do things in big things, you know.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I think the handshake. I'm doing this for some reason. The handshake, in case you don't know what that is. That Hannibal kind of implies all the way through the film on occasions that Jack Crawford is romantically interested in Clarice, and so maybe it's kind of a way to sort of imply that something is going to happen. Perhaps, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
I took it the other way, because he came and mentioned this, because he said, "Oh, your dad would be really proud of you." That it suddenly flipped to me.
No,
it was more of a paternal.
Sorry, no, it's not the handshake. It's the proper big close-up of the handshake.
The unnecessary angle.
Just unnecessary close-up. Yeah.
Maybe it's not them. Maybe they couldn't get all the actors in, so they just got 2 extra stand-ins and just said, "There you go." We're going to get really close in on it though, because otherwise we're going to see it's not you.
I do want to come back to something. I'm just going to tell you what we want to see, but you've just piqued me interest in something I do want to ask you about. My other scene, again, just the scene that bugged me is when they're driving back from the morgue and Jack sat there and she sat like with her back onto the seat, and I'm thinking, go put your seatbelt on. This just feels like they just went, this will be so much easier to film with one camera. Jodie, move over. Like, just,
cool.
Because I would never sit in the car leaning on the back of the seat. But that bit I picked. The one thing then I want to ask you is, just because you mentioned about that, the potential reason for the handshake, what's your reasoning behind when Hannibal's in the cage and Clarice says, you know, he shouts Clarice back and says, you forgot the papers, and he just does that little touch of a finger. What's your thoughts behind that? I
think it's purely friendship. I think he's probably found someone that because it's referenced throughout actually all three of the films, I think, but it's referenced in this one where when he escapes, Clarice's partner or friend at the FBI, I can't recall her name. She's worried that he's going to come after Clarice, and she says, "Not a chance. He'd consider it rude." And I think it's because he's so fond of her. He's finally found. He's obviously used to being surrounded by like Dr. Frederick Chilton, who was just awful to him all the time, and obviously now he's on the run. Well, at that point he's on the run, so he's got a lot of people that have obviously, probably rightly so, been unkind to him since he was convicted. But I think she's sort of treating with respect and vice versa, and so that's how that relationship builds, and he decides he's going to help her. So I don't know, for me, I think it is just a friendship, but it's also a goodbye, I think, as well. It's his way of sort of indirectly saying, I'm on my way. You're probably not going to see me, because after that is when he does escape, after she's been sort of taken out by the security. So for me, it's a friendly thing rather than a romantic thing, but I think it's more of a goodbye than anything else.
There's that great line, isn't he, which probably my favourite line in the movie, when he says to it, like, I'm going to misquote it now after saying the favourite line, but he says, like, the world's a more interesting place with you in it.
Exactly, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Just before he presumably goes and kills Frederick Chilton and has an old friend for dinner. Yeah.
Oh, he has a nice 9-course meal, maybe. Yeah. So we always talk about like the impression that the film make. A couple of things I've noticed, kind of Clerks 2. I don't know if you've ever seen Clerks 2. They do the bit of riff on the goodbye horses scene with Jay and Silent Bob.
I've not seen the film, but I've seen the clip from the film.
So obviously influenced that scene. The film obviously won 5 Academy Awards, which is just unbelievable in itself. And then obviously we get the prequel. We got Red Dragon, haven't we? I'll be totally honest, I've seen the Hannibal as in the sequel, but I've never seen the prequel that doesn't have Anthony Hopkins in. Have you guys seen that?
Hannibal Rising. I've not. You've seen it, haven't you?
I've watched it. It's not. It's more of like a horror, like a slasher type. More so. It's definitely not in the same. I mean, Silence of the Lambs is by far the standard, and I really like Red Dragon, and I quite like Hannibal as well. But yeah, Hannibal Rising isn't even in the same sort of standard as any of those.
What do you think? What do you think for you is the overall lasting impact? Is it those? It's created those tropes that are being used now. But what about for you guys, just personally as well, with it being one of your favorite films, Matt?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not prepared for it. So, I think it probably influences a little bit the way that I write, or the way that John and I write, and we try and sort of put some of our scenes together in the bits and pieces that we write. And more broadly, I think it has influenced other stories, other films. I could be way off here, but I don't think we get as many films of this style, this sort of, FBI chasing serial killers. I think it shifted to TV. I think TV, long form,
like
TV
True Detective's a really good example of probably a TV quality version of something that sounds like that.
David Finch, is it
Mindhunter? Yeah.
I've watched that. One thing I got the legacy is it did sort of create a subgenre of this FBI behavioural side, because I don't remember much before Silence of the Lambs. Obviously, we've been serial killer films and serial killers in movies and TV, but since then it's created that it's almost like a subgenre of serial killer stroke crime, this behavioral science element.
Definitely the Hannibal Lecter character has influenced numerous characters since, hasn't it?
I think it's influenced as well how storytellers, whether it's through book or film, TV, whatever, how they use that type of character, because it's probably spawned, I could be completely wrong, but I don't recall, at least in film, a film prior to Silence of the Lambs where the good guys are asking the bad guys for help. Whereas now, particularly with like cop shows, I guess, or whether that's British or elsewhere, is that there's, you know, you've got these really high intelligent murderers or informers who can, you know, FBI informants, and is it Blacklist with James Spader?
Yeah.
Where, you know, you've got, basically you're asking the bad guy for help, even though you know you shouldn't be doing it, but he's the only one that can help. I think it basically spawned a lot of those types of ideas. But also,
sort of,
yeah, like the anti-hero, but not of in a physical way, more, you know, of how intelligent they are or their knowledge base, whatever that might be. But I also think it's worth noting that you can clearly see from Silence of the Lambs where that show don't tell type of violence that we were talking about, where I think there's a lot of that that's clearly come from, you know, the Alfred Hitchcock style of making films, which is great in my opinion. And I think they've kind of carried it on, and it dwindled out. I know we've mentioned it a couple of times, but that type of, like we've said, if this film got made 10, even probably 15 years ago, there'd be a lot more action, there'd be a lot more gore, and it'd probably treat the audience a lot more stupid than they are as well. So you'd get nowhere near the same quality of film, in my opinion.
And do you think you would still get Anthony Hopkins, or do you think you'd get a big name?
He wasn't at the time, was he?
No.
Yeah, he wasn't a household at the time, was he?
No. I don't know. So it's a good point. I do think that a lot of the time, if you know, especially if they're chasing the box office, then they will try and bring in a big name that'll attract people in.
I think as well, if it was a TV show, rather than because there's a good chance that this type of thing would get made into a TV show now. Well, it did, I suppose, didn't it, with Hannibal? But you've got, because TV is so big at the moment, you've got so many, like True Detective and Game of Thrones, for instance, like shows like that of that type of value can get big actors now. It's not just, you know, the lesser actors get the TV and the big movie stars get the movies. You've got really well-known Oscar-winning actors making really good TV. So I think that's kind of changed things up a little bit as well.
It does seem like that the movie came along at the right time, didn't it? Right director, right actors, and the right time in terms of, as you said, you know, not spoiled by having too much gore, not spoiled by, you know, playing down to the audience. It certainly doesn't do any of that, does it, at all?
I think one of the points I'd add, I mean, we've mentioned it right through our hour of chatting about it, is how many times it's transcended like film nerds. It became such a parody. Vengeance Saunders, the jokes of it, every TV commercial, the jokes of it. The quotes, we talked about it with Rob Reiner films. There's always moments, big Rob Reiner films, that everyone knows about, even though they don't know the film. This has got 5 or 6 of them moments that people know that, or the Flava beat. They don't even see the film, but they know them bits. And I'm like, for it to have done that, I just think that's when you know you've transcended the film. It's become pop culture.
Yeah, it'll constantly find a new audience, won't it?
Yeah,
definitely.
I think there's a memorable moment in pretty much every scene, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, so from one character or another.
So now we've got this is our version of the quick fire round. So Liam's going to ping 5 or 6 questions to you.
Yep. It will be edited on the podcast. It'll sound more exciting.
Yes, take as long as you want.
There'll be music in the background as well to speed up. I'll just throw a question at you. Either one of you can answer. Okay, first question is: would you rather be a hero or a villain?
Villain. I've said this before. Yeah. Do you want an explanation, or is that not quick fire?
No, that's fine.
Oh God, I can't explain myself either, and I've said villain.
It's just whatever comes naturally is more true. FBI or CID?
FBI.
Yeah.
It was released on Valentine's Day. What's the best first date film
Oh, God.
Don't worry about the gap.
Well, oh man, this is.
I've recorded my answers the next day.
I took my wife to see Cabin in the Woods, so I'll say, and we're married 10 years later, so I'll say that
It worked.
it worked.
I'd probably say either Silence of the Lambs or Jaws, because if it's someone you're sort of wanting to be in a relationship with, you want them to sort of know what sort of films you like. So yeah, I'd go Silence of the Lambs or Jaws.
Brilliant. Okay, lamb chop or lamb kebab?
Lamb kebab.
Yeah, lamb kebab.
Okay, and this is Dave's question, by the way. Just putting that out there. Drink of choice with human flesh.
Red wine.
I was going to say, yeah, nice Chianti.
Yeah. You're gonna do the.
I can't do it, can I? You can do it, but I can't do it. With
Yeah, I thought you could do it.
I can't do it at all. No, you've not done. You've held off from doing your Hannibal Lecter / Clarice Starling impressions throughout this whole
Heard
episode.
it, yeah.
It's not about me, Matt.
We're
It's
going
not
to
my
talk about how
podcast.
they can find, how our listener can find out you doing those impressions in a minute.
Oh, great, lovely.
So for our listener who hasn't seen it, then you can watch it. Currently, it's on Amazon.
Amazon Prime, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the main streaming bit to get. We normally do a bit where we talk about, you know, if you like Silence of the Lambs, what else would you like? And we tend to sort of pick some themes. But have you got any film suggestions that, you know, if someone, you know, come to you and said, right, watch Silence of the Lambs last night, absolutely loved it. Like, what else are you suggesting?
We were talking about this earlier after your questions, and we both basically had the same answer. And basically anything by David Fincher, I think. So Zodiac, Seven, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I would chuck in the rest of the trilogy. So I'd watch Red Dragon and Hannibal, because I think Hannibal probably got a bad rap at the time, but I rewatched it recently. It's different to the other two, but it's trying to be. So I think Hannibal is definitely worth a rewatch.
And I like them both. I really like Red Dragon. I think Red Fans is great in that. But if you're wanting something a bit that'll keep it going for a bit longer, Mindhunter is good. Although Mindhunter is frustrating because it's been seemingly postponed indefinitely, which is quite frustrating. Because
It's not coming back, is it?
Probably not. We'll have to finish it off. We should all get together for another episode where we just fill in the blanks and what happens in that. And you know what I did watch on Netflix not too long ago was Criminal. I think it's called Criminal, where it's like separate interviews.
Yeah.
With, like,
It's
with
a different story every episode, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a different sort of like criminal, but it's got loads of like different sort of slightly A-list sort of celebrities in parts playing like different criminals. And just in terms of just tonally, it's similar in that sort of, as we mentioned before, comfort watching. It's quite an easy comfort sort of atmospheric show to watch. I'd throw that into the mix as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. We've gone for just themes that are totally strange compared to what you guys have just went through, which is more in keeping with the film that we're talking about. Am I going first? You going first?
I'll go first because you can wrap up. My theme was villains you secretly like.
That's good.
So I picked 5. The first one, and I always come back to this one, Point Break. Bodhi, Patrick Swayze's character.
Yeah.
You just love him. He's boss, isn't he? Training Day, which we've already mentioned. Alonso, which is Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Again, he's just so cool. No Country for Old Men. Anton, Xavier Bardem. I think he's the best thing in a film.
Yeah, true.
Inglourious Bastards, Hans Lander.
Yeah.
Waltz, I think he's the best thing.
I'll give you that one. Yeah.
And I picked The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix just because awesome performance.
Over Jack Nicholson. We went.
Oh yeah.
We just recently went to. It was Batman Day, wasn't it? You know, was it last September? We went to see Batman 1989 again. Just remind me how good it was. So. That's a bold choice. Yeah.
I think Heath Ledger's a bit overrated. Joker, if I'm honest.
Right, moving on.
Assume no one backs you up there.
I mean, I said Jack Nicholson, but
I think if you like Silence of the Lambs, I think you would like them 5 films.
Well, I like them, and
I like all of them actually. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Right, work's done. I'm off.
So mine are all about female cops or female law enforcement officers. I've gone with Out of Sight with Jennifer, because Jennifer Lopez is like the lead FBI agent in that.
We've done a podcast on that as well.
And we've done a
haven't we?
podcast on that one, yeah. Happy Valley,
Oh yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah Lancashire. Blue Steel with Jamie Lee Curtis. Do you remember that one? It's a lot.
I know of it. I've not seen it.
That's a really good film. Late 80s. I've picked Brooklyn Nine-Nine purely because of Amy and Rosa.
Yeah.
I think they're great characters, especially those sort of female, female police officers.
Good show.
I've gone with The Heat.
Yeah, great film.
The
Yeah.
Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy.
I love Melissa McCarthy.
And then you can't not talk about Fargo with
Yeah.
Frances McDormand. And again, we're watching the series as well. So, okay, that was I'll watch it if you can special on Sounds of the Lambs. So, guys, how can our listener find you guys? Where are you in terms of podcast and your socials? How can anyone find you if you want to go and check you out, which I'm sure they will?
You know we didn't.
Sorry. Yeah, so you can get us on Instagram at the film thingy. Oh God, I always do this every time. Sorry, one of them's at the and one's just film thingy. You can get us on Instagram at the Film Thingy Podcast. So that's got links to Spotify, which is where we normally are. That's the biggest platform we're on. I think we're also on Amazon Music.
Yeah.
Amazon Music. Apple haven't let us on yet. Don't know why. Maybe done something wrong there to Apple.
Don't know.
I don't know anyone listens to Amazon Music.
No, we've never had a hit
They've
on
on it as
Amazon
well,
Music.
Yeah, I think we've like something my mum would listen to. My mum would listen to
Yeah.
on Amazon Music. Like, you know?
Get us on Spotify. That'll do. We're on
Yeah.
Spotify and we're on Instagram, so you can catch up with all of the last series.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. We've had great fun there for the last
Us too. Thanks for
hour.
having us.
So, yeah, and a great film, great choice as well.
Gosh,
So,
guys.
for our listener, Sounds of the Lambs, watch it if you can.